I wasn't invited to my brother's wedding, so I went on vacation. Sorry, sweetheart, only close family can come, my mom said. When the wedding got canceled over a debt, everyone begged me to help, but it was already too late. Can you imagine being disinvited from your own brother's wedding, only to watch his entire life crumble because you finally refused to clean up their mess? That's exactly what happened to me, and trust me, it wasn't an accident. My name is Jenny. For years, I was the quiet sister, the one they barely noticed unless they needed something. But the day I heard those 3 words, "It's just family, dear," cutting me out of my golden boy brother's wedding, that was the day I realized how completely they'd erased me. And what happened next? Well, let's just say that wedding never happened. Not because I actively did anything to stop it, but because I finally chose not to. This isn't just a story about being excluded. It's about the shocking power of saying no when they only come calling to clean up the chaos they created. So, let's rewind. You know that gut feeling, that chill that tells you a phone call is about to change everything? Mine hit on a damp Thursday morning in Brooklyn. I was buttoning my coat for work, half asleep, when my mother's voice sliced through the silence. "Jenny," she said, clipped cold. "You're not invited to Mark's wedding. It's just family, dear. Just family." The words physically hit me. I forgot how to breathe. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, staring at a dusty ficus, feeling like I'd been punched. "What?" I finally choked out. "You're saying I'm not. It's complicated." She cut me off, like she and my dad were a unified front. "We've decided to keep it intimate." Before I could even process that, my phone buzzed. A group text. From Mark. My older brother, the golden boy. His message was barely a sentence. "Hey everyone, just confirming the guest list is tight. No extras. Hope you understand. Can't wait to celebrate. No extras." The pit in my stomach turned to ice. My name wasn't even in that message. No direct address, no explanation. Just a public declaration that I didn't belong. And just like that, my world shrank. My mother's voice faded. The walls of my tiny apartment pressed in. I sank onto the edge of my bed, the faded quilt creaking under my weight, and stared at that text. They weren't even ashamed. No fight, no apology, just quiet, brutal dismissal. The worst part? A dark, ugly corner of my heart almost expected it. See, I'd always been the quiet one. The afterthought. Mark got the cheers, the toasts, the spotlight. I got side eyes and silence. He won awards, we had celebratory dinners. I got a big promotion last year, and my mom forgot to call back. And now I was erased from the biggest day of his life. They were planning a wedding without me. I could almost hear the clinking glasses, the soft jazz, the laughter drifting from that big colonial house in New Jersey. Every cousin, every neighbor, even the dog would be there. Just not me. I sat there until my coffee went cold, my heart thudding in my ears louder than any subway roar. It wasn't about the wedding. Not really. It was about a lifetime of being put second. No, last. So, I did what any woman might do when her family casually cuts her out of their lives. I got mad. I got quiet. And I started planning. Not revenge. Not yet. Just distance. Have you ever been told you don't belong by the people who raised you? Tell me in the comments, because what I did next, that was the first step in finally choosing me. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream into a pillow or call anyone for sympathy. I didn't even reread the group text or replay my mother's cold voice. I just sat on my couch with the overhead light off, watching headlights flicker past my window like ghosts of lives I'd never lived. And then, sometime around 3 a.m., I opened my laptop. Google, last-minute flights from NYC. I didn't even know where I was going. I just knew I needed to leave. Not forever, not dramatically. Just for now, just long enough to remember what it felt like to be me, outside the shadow of a family who never quite saw me. Portland. The word popped out, a whisper on the screen. Misty, green, unpredictable. Somewhere so unlike my life in Brooklyn, with its sirens and cigarette-slick sidewalks and family memories clinging to every corner. I'd never been to the Pacific Northwest, but something about it felt far enough. I booked a flight for noon. When the sun finally rose, its pale light spilled across my half-packed suitcase. I threw in jeans, hiking boots, a few sweaters, and the scarf Lucille had given me 2 Christmases ago. Lucille, the only person in my family who ever truly saw me, who passed away 2 years earlier. She would have told me to go. She would have made me pancakes and said, "Jenny, honey, sometimes the best revenge is becoming impossible to ignore." The cab ride to the airport was silent. I stared out the window, watching the city blur. At JFK, the crowds buzzed around me, clutching passports and Starbucks, boarding passes and goodbye hugs. I had no one waving goodbye. No one even knew I was leaving. Part of me wanted to disappear quietly, the same way they had erased me. 6 hours later, I stepped out into the drizzly Portland air and felt something unexpected: relief. The city didn't know me. The trees didn't hold grudges. Strangers didn't look at me with that tight-lipped sympathy I'd grown to hate. Here, I was no one's disappointment, no one's difficult daughter. Just Jenny. I checked into a tiny inn outside the city, a converted craftsman tucked behind a bookstore and a cafe that smelled like cinnamon and stories. My room had a slanted ceiling, creaky floorboards, and a window with foggy glass that looked out over a street lined with crooked trees. That first night, I didn't sleep much, but I did breathe. And that, I realized, was something. The next morning I walked. Aimlessly. Through wet sidewalks, hidden alley murals, past coffee carts and vinyl shops and moss-covered benches. I stopped for tea at a cafe where no one asked me about Mark. No one looked at me like they were about to say, "It's just family, dear." It was the first time in years I wasn't preparing myself for someone else's expectations. I thought about all the times I'd bent myself into someone else's shape, helping with Mark's college essays because he's better with numbers, organizing Mom's birthday party while she gushed about how thoughtful Mark was for remembering the champagne, skipping my own vacation to attend his law school graduation. I had been the scaffolding for everyone else's moments. But now I was gone. And no one noticed. I spent that evening curled up in the inn's common room, reading a used paperback and sipping hot cider. A couple next to me played chess. A girl in a raincoat doodled in a sketch pad. I was invisible, but in the best possible way. Free. I didn't check my phone. Not once. Whatever crisis they were spiraling into back home could wait. Let them wonder where I was. Let them feel, for once, the emptiness I'd carried in every family photo where I was cut out by comments like, "Smile bigger, Jenny," or "Let Mark stand in the middle." Maybe I wasn't in the middle anymore. But maybe that was exactly where I belonged. Not center stage, just out of frame. Making space for something new. Something that, this time, would be mine. By the third day, I started checking the family group chat again. Not because I missed them, not because I wanted to be included. But sometimes, when you've been shut out, there's a quiet kind of power in watching them squirm from the outside. The chat was called Home Base, a name I'd created years ago when I still believed we were one. It had been mostly dormant for weeks, but now it buzzed with bubbly emojis and photo uploads. Mark posted a selfie with his fiancée, Serena, holding up champagne in front of my parents' fireplace. "Final venue deposit is in," he wrote. "Big day coming soon." The replies came in fast. Mom sent a flurry of hearts. Dad dropped a thumbs up, then an awkward joke about walking Serena down the aisle if Mark got cold feet. Serena chimed in with a countdown sticker and a boomerang of herself spinning in her white rehearsal dress. But underneath all the glitter, there was a nervous rhythm I hadn't seen before. Mom's messages were off, not in tone, but in frequency. She was posting too often. Double texting, replying to her own messages with anxious corrections. One post stuck out, a blurry photo of a kitchen table covered in receipts, notebooks, and what looked like a calculator. "Budget night, almost there," she wrote. No one responded. I leaned back in my bed, my tea cooling beside me. Something was definitely off. The next day, another post, this time from Dad. A picture of Mark laughing on the patio with Serena, both holding red wine. The caption read, "Let the good times roll." But it was the background that caught my eye. Behind them, through the open patio door, was a whiteboard propped on a chair. Zooming in, I could barely make out scribbles of numbers, crossed-out figures, and the word deadline. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could have replied, could have asked what deadline they were worried about. But I didn't. I just watched. Mark sent another message 2 hours later. This one, a selfie in a tuxedo. Fit check. What do you think, fam? Only Serena and a cousin replied. Mom didn't say a word. That's when I knew. Things were unraveling back home, and I wasn't there to hold the threads together this time. I went for a walk to clear my head, letting the Portland drizzle soak into my sleeves. There was something about the mist that felt like memory, soft, clinging, hard to shake. I wandered into a bookstore and lost myself in the poetry section, flipping through lines about abandonment, forgiveness, and names written in sand. I don't know why, but that night I dreamed of the house I grew up in. I saw the kitchen, the old tile I once scrubbed while Mom barked at me about leaving streaks. I saw Dad's creased forehead behind his reading glasses, his pen tapping against overdue bills. I saw Mark, at age 10, being praised for fixing the remote while I stood off to the side, holding the batteries he'd forgotten. In the dream, they all looked at me, and then turned away. When I woke up, my phone had a new notification. Not a message. A photo. A group shot from my parents' living room. Mark, Serena, Mom, Dad, and a few cousins, all toasting something with cheap champagne. The caption read, "To the big day. 3 weeks to go." But everyone looked tense. Their smiles didn't reach their eyes. Serena was turned just slightly away from Mark. Mom was holding her glass too tightly. Dad's jaw was clenched like he'd just heard bad news, but was pretending he hadn't. I zoomed in again. On the wall behind them was a calendar. The date, Friday, was circled in red. And underneath it, written in my mother's precise cursive, loan due. I stared at that word for a long, long time. I didn't know what it meant yet. But I had a feeling that my absence wasn't just inconvenient anymore. It was becoming a problem. And if they were counting on me to come fix it, they were in for a very long wait. Portland's air had a way of crawling under your skin. By the 5th day, I'd walked so many forested trails I'd stopped counting steps. My boots were caked in mud. My cheeks stung from the wind. But my chest, it felt lighter. Like every breath I took peeled away one more layer of bitterness. I found myself on a coastal trail that curved along a cliffside. Moss-covered rocks, gulls circling above, waves crashing far below like some ancient, private language. I wasn't thinking about the wedding, or the texts I hadn't answered, or the silence from my mother. I was just walking. That's when I heard her laugh. Sharp and free, echoing off the rocks like a song that didn't care who heard it. I turned to see a woman, maybe my age, maybe younger, kneeling on a patch of damp grass, photographing wildflowers poking through the moss. She had curly dark hair tucked into a mustard beanie and wore mismatched gloves. She noticed me watching and grinned. "They bloom late this year," she said, standing and brushing off her knees. I always forget how stubborn life can be. I gave a polite smile, ready to walk on, but she tilted her head. "You're not from here, are you?" I hesitated. "Brooklyn." She pointed at my scuffed boots. "Thought so. You've got the look of someone trying to outwalk something." I couldn't help it. I laughed. "Is it that obvious?" She shrugged. "Only to someone who's done the same." That was how I met Clara. Clara, the florist/part-time poet who spoke like she'd read your heart before you opened your mouth. She asked no questions I didn't want to answer. Didn't pry into the pain behind my quiet. She just walked with me for a while, pointing out tide pools and explaining the names of local birds. At the trail's end, she paused. "There's a dinner party tonight. Not fancy. Just a few of us misfits who cook too much and talk too loud. You should come." I blinked. "Me? Yeah, you. Bring wine if you want, or nothing. Just yourself is good." I hadn't been invited to anything in I don't even know how long. For a moment, I almost said no. The voice in my head, my mother's voice, whispered, "Don't impose. You'll make it awkward. You don't fit in." But another voice, mine, whispered louder. "Say yes. Just this once." Clara scribbled her address on a napkin and handed it to me like a secret. That night, I stood outside her house, a faded blue bungalow with a crooked mailbox and wind chimes that sang like glass laughter. I almost left. Then the door opened and Clara waved me in like we were old friends. Inside, the house glowed. Mismatched chairs, pots of pasta steaming, people shouting over music and laughing with their mouths full. No judgment, no calculation. No one asking if I'd RSVP'd or whether I brought the right gift. Just life, raw and loud and real. Clara introduced me as Jenny from the East Coast, who walks like she's unraveling and somehow still standing. I should have been embarrassed. Instead, I laughed until my ribs hurt. Someone handed me a plate. Someone else poured me a glass of red wine. I sat between a woman named Mo who made her own soap and a guy named Devin who taught guitar to kids in foster care. They didn't ask about my family. They asked what made me happy, what kind of sky I missed, what food I'd cook if I could only make one dish for the rest of my life. I hadn't had a conversation like that in years. Somewhere between the garlic bread and the last pour of wine, I felt something shift. I felt seen. Not as the daughter who was too quiet. Not as the sister who didn't sparkle like Mark. Not as the ghost in the family album. Just Jenny. By the time I left, Clara hugged me like we'd known each other for years. "You're good company," she whispered. "You don't owe anyone an explanation for existing, you know." I walked home with her words buzzing in my chest. No one had ever said that to me. Not once. And as I curled into bed, phone still untouched, I realized there was a whole world outside the circle I'd spent my life trying to belong to. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't need their seat at the table anymore. Because I was starting to build my own. I didn't check my phone for 3 full days. Not once. Instead, I let it sit at the bottom of my tote bag, silenced, while I lived like someone no longer tethered to obligation. Clara took me to a local poetry reading. I helped Mo make soap in her garage, lavender and lemon zest. I even stayed up late one night sketching out a recipe for lentil stew, something that would have been laughed off at home as too weird or too earthy. For once, no one was measuring my worth by how useful I was. But on the morning of the 4th day, curiosity tugged at me. I turned on my phone while sipping coffee in a sun-drenched Portland cafe, half expecting a handful of messages. Instead, it was a deluge. 18 missed calls, 9 voicemails, dozens of texts from my mother, my father, even Mark. The tone was scrambled, like no one had agreed on how to talk to me. From Mom, "Jenny, dear, just checking in. Hope you're safe." 3 hours later, "I know you're busy, but we really need to talk. Please answer." Then, "Jenny, this isn't funny. We need your help." Mark's message was less subtle. "Can you be an adult for once and call us back? This is serious." And then the one that made my stomach clench. "The venue needs the final payment by Friday or they cancel. If you won't help for us, at least think about how this affects Serena." Serena. The perfect bride-to-be, the new favorite. I could picture her crying in the guest room, Mom rubbing her back, Dad sighing dramatically about how unreliable Jenny always was. The guilt was there, of course. It had been planted deep years ago, like a seed. But something else rose stronger, a strange, almost thrilling calm. Because I hadn't done anything. Nothing cruel, nothing loud. I hadn't stormed out or made a scene or gone on Facebook to air family drama. I had simply disappeared. And in my absence, everything was falling apart. That night, I listened to the voicemails. Not all of them, just enough to catch the pattern. Mom's voice went from sweet to sharp in seconds. "Jenny, we're just trying to figure things out. It's not fair for you to disappear like this. We've always supported you. Remember when you were figuring things out after college, when you changed jobs? It's one signature. You have the best credit in the family. The bank already flagged the application without you. So, that was it. That's what this was all about. They needed me to co-sign. That invisible, unspoken contract that comes with being the reliable one. The one who never asks for help. The one who's expected to save the day, even when she wasn't invited to it." The final voicemail was from Dad. His voice low, edged with frustration. "I know you're upset about the wedding stuff, but this is your family, Jenny. We need you. Mark needs you. You're the only one with a clean credit line. We'll make it up to you. But right now, we need that signature." I stared out the cafe window for a long time after that. The rain had started again, tapping softly against the glass. I imagined my mother at the dining room table, calculator in hand, muttering about how ungrateful I was. My father pacing, muttering, "We'll figure it out," while doing nothing. Mark scrolling through groomsmen gifts, assuming it would all somehow fall into place. They'd all been counting on my silence. On the part of me that still wanted to be needed. But here's the thing they forgot. Need only works if the door swings both ways. If you're never invited, you're not obligated. If they erase you, they can't expect you to write them back into the picture. I sipped my coffee slowly and deleted every voicemail, one by one. I didn't answer the texts. I didn't return the calls. Instead, I opened my notebook and started writing down a list of places in Oregon I hadn't seen yet. Because while they were scrambling to make numbers add up, I was finally subtracting myself from the equation. And let me tell you, that kind of math felt like freedom. They didn't stop calling. If anything, their desperation multiplied. Each morning, my phone lit up before sunrise. Voicemails from Mom, filled with false calm. Messages from Dad that began with "Jenny, listen," and always ended with thinly veiled frustration. Even Mark, who used to ignore my birthday most years, was suddenly the most attentive sibling on earth, dropping texts like breadcrumbs, trying to lure me back. I know we've had our issues, but this wedding is important. We're family. That still matters, right? It's just one signature. You're overreacting. But here's the thing about silence. Once you step into it fully, it becomes its own kind of armor. I didn't reply. Not once. And from what I gathered through the not-so-private family group chat, still going, still buzzing with forced cheer, things were beginning to unravel. Serena posted less. The countdown stickers disappeared. Mom's messages grew more clipped. And then came the real sign something had shifted. A photo of Dad sitting at the dining room table, surrounded by bills, his reading glasses halfway down his nose, looking 10 years older than usual. Making it work, one penny at a time, Mom captioned it, but the joke didn't land. No likes, no replies, not even a pity emoji. Clara noticed I'd been quieter than usual and asked if I was okay. We were sitting outside a food truck, eating smoked jackfruit tacos. "Just watching a fire from far away," I said, only half joking. "Sounds like you used to live in the fire," she replied, licking hot sauce from her thumb. "Yeah," I admitted. "I think I did." Clara didn't push for details. She never did. But that night, in my tiny rented room, I scrolled through the family chat again. Not because I missed them, but because I needed to know how far they'd fall before they stopped pretending they didn't need me. It was worse than I thought. One message from Mom to Mark stood out. Not meant for the group, but accidentally posted publicly. "If she doesn't call back today, we'll have to tell the venue we can't make the payment. Your father's already maxed the cards. I told you this was too much." Mark responded instantly, but only with one word: handled. No response followed. It was like watching a stage collapse from behind the curtain. That night, they tried calling again. 7 times in a row. I turned my phone off. Let them feel the silence. Let them sit in the chaos they'd built, brick by selfish brick. I wasn't being cruel. I wasn't being petty. I was just done. Done being the reliable fallback. Done being the invisible backbone. Done being invited only when it was convenient to them, and discarded the moment I wasn't useful. And you know what? I slept like a rock. The next morning, I didn't check for updates. I made banana pancakes with Clara and Mo in their shared kitchen, laughing over a broken spatula and someone's burnt toast. And when Clara offered to drive us all up to Cannon Beach for the day, I didn't hesitate. While my mother probably sat on hold with the bank, while Mark paced and panicked, while Serena tried on a dress she might never wear. I stood on a windy shoreline, wrapped in a borrowed jacket, toes digging into cold sand. No phone, no guilt, no obligations. Just the rhythmic hush of the tide, like a promise. This, I realized, is what peace sounds like when you finally stop begging for it. The sky was gray again. In Portland, that meant comfort more than gloom. Like the world itself understood the need to go quiet, to pull inward, to rest. I sat alone in a tiny cafe tucked between a comic shop and a laundromat, sipping oat milk chai and listening to rain tap gently against the windows. And then, for the first time in 2 days, I turned my phone back on. It vibrated violently in my hand, like it had been holding its breath too. 17 missed calls. 10 new voicemails. A full screen of texts. The name that appeared most, Mom. The second most, Mark. Not one from Serena. I started with the messages, just to feel the temperature of the storm. Jenny, please call me. I don't know what you're trying to prove. This is serious. The bank said no again. They're calling it incomplete financial risk. We need you. It's your brother's wedding, for God's sake. You're really going to let everything fall apart after all we've done for you? I paused at that one. After all we've done for you. The phrase landed like a slap. All I could think of was every late-night airport pickup I'd done. Every birthday they forgot. Every family trip where I was handed the camera instead of being invited into the photo. Everything they'd done for me was built on a story they wrote, and one I no longer accepted. The voicemails were even more frantic. Mom's voice trembled in the first one. Jenny, it's your mother. I need to hear your voice. The venue says they need full payment by Friday or the date's gone. And we've already sent out invites. Serena's parents are asking questions. Your father is, well, he's not handling it well. Call me back, please. In another, she didn't bother with pleasantries. You've made your point. You're angry. We understand. But you've had your little vacation. It's time to be part of this family again. We need that co-signature. I stopped the playback halfway through, because in her voice I heard something new. It wasn't guilt, not regret. Certainly not apology. It was panic. Pure, rising, irreversible panic. Not because they missed me, but because they were losing control. And they were finally realizing I wasn't going to save them this time. I opened a blank text, typed out, I saw your messages, and then deleted it. Because I wasn't going to soften the silence with half answers or polite refusals. I wasn't going to explain myself to people who never cared about the why behind my choices, only the convenience. Instead, I took a slow breath and looked out the window. The city outside was in no rush. People walked under umbrellas. Dogs in raincoats trotted beside them. A boy with headphones danced across the crosswalk like no one was watching. Life continued. My life continued. And I didn't owe anyone an entry pass anymore. Later that evening, back at the inn, I did the only thing that felt right. I deleted the voicemail notifications. I archived the family chat. I set my phone to do not disturb and tucked it screen-side down into the nightstand drawer. And then I did something else. I took out a pen and started writing. Not a text, not a letter. Just a list. Titled, Things I No Longer Accept. At the top, conditional love disguised as tradition. Manipulation packaged as family duty. Being the emergency contact for people who don't even remember your birthday. I fell asleep with the pen still in my hand. No one had ever taught me what self-respect looked like. But I was learning. And it was quiet, and it was firm, and it felt like coming home to myself. I found out the wedding was canceled the same way I found out I wasn't invited in the first place, through the family group chat. No phone call, no voice. Just digital shrapnel. It started with Serena's mother. She wasn't even part of the chat, but someone had screenshotted her Facebook post and dropped it in without comment. To those asking about Mark and Serena's wedding, it has been postponed indefinitely. We appreciate your understanding during this difficult time. Please direct questions to the couple directly. Postponed indefinitely. A soft phrase that felt like a cracked wine glass. It doesn't shatter loudly, but you know it's useless now. The chat exploded after that. Cousin Tyler asked if it was a joke. Aunt Mari demanded clarification. No one answered. Then, like clockwork, Mark posted, "Sorry everyone. The venue fell through last minute. We'll reassess soon. Appreciate your support." That was it. No apology, no admission, just a vague shrug, as if the most elaborate event of the year hadn't just evaporated overnight. But I knew better. I went to Serena's Instagram next, just to confirm. Everything was gone. Every post, every photo, every caption with hearts and hashtags and countdown to forever text. Scrubbed like it never existed. Her profile was blank. The final nail came from my cousin Amber, who texted me directly. Something no one had done in weeks. "I don't know what happened exactly, but your mom was crying on the porch when we showed up. Some guys from the venue showed up too. It was bad. I could picture it. Mom standing there in her pearls and pressed slacks, trying to pretend she hadn't bet it all on a fantasy. Dad behind her, probably blaming the weather or a banking glitch. Mark fuming because someone finally told him no. And Serena? She was smart enough to walk. What I didn't expect, what I should have expected, was how fast the blame shifted. That night, my voicemail blinked again. I let it play over dinner in my room, just to see how far they'd go. Mom's voice was ice-wrapped in velvet. Well, I hope you're happy. Everything fell apart. Serena's family is humiliated. Mark is devastated. This is on you, Jenny. All you had to do was answer. One signature, one call. But no, you had to make a point. I hope it was worth it. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She assigned blame like a verdict. It was surreal, because the only thing I'd done was nothing. I didn't destroy the wedding. I didn't lie to vendors or make promises I couldn't keep. I didn't overspend or take out loans with shaky credit. I didn't design a dream around assumptions and entitlement. I simply didn't come running when they snapped their fingers. And that was enough to burn it all down. It should have crushed me, hearing that message. The guilt should have surged. But it didn't. Because deep down, I knew they were never really planning a wedding with me, just around me. And when their house of cards finally collapsed, they reached for the one piece they'd always expected to hold, me. But I wasn't there anymore. And now their silence wasn't icy or smug or dismissive. It was empty. I stepped out onto the tiny balcony of my room, wrapped in a blanket, letting the rain kiss my skin. Below, the street hummed softly. Cars passing, someone laughing, a dog barking once. Real life. Unstaged. Honest. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel cruel. I just felt done. Done trying to earn a seat at a table that was never set for me. They had chosen to exclude me, and I had chosen to stay gone. And now the silence was mine, and I wasn't giving it back. The voicemail came at 2:13 a.m. I didn't see it until the next morning, sunlight slanting through the curtains in ribbons of pale gold. My body was wrapped in soft linen sheets, my head still buzzing with laughter from the night before. It had been spontaneous, another one of Clara's impulsive gatherings, a let's not let the rain win dinner that turned into an impromptu rooftop jam session. And Mo had brought candles. Devin brought a guitar. I brought a pie I'd half burned, but no one complained. It was joy. Plain, imperfect joy, the kind of night my family would have mocked for being messy or bohemian. The kind of night I'd never had with them. So, when I saw the new voicemail notification, my mother's name in bold, I hesitated for a full minute, thumb hovering above the play button. Not out of fear, but because I didn't need to listen. I knew what it would say. Something trembling and distant. Something laced with guilt, but not remorse. Something meant to twist my silence into cruelty, my absence into betrayal. Still, I pressed play. Jenny. My mother's voice was soft. Worn out. I don't know if you'll even listen to this. I guess I just wanted you to know that we're home now. The wedding's off. Serena moved her things out last night. Mark hasn't spoken to us all day. A pause. I could hear her breathing, the shuffle of fabric in the background, like she'd turned away from the phone mid-thought. Your father's pretending he's fine. You know how he is. And Mark, he's blaming everyone, but mostly you. And I guess so am I. Even though I know it's not fair. I know we didn't handle things right. Another pause. Longer this time. It's hard, Jenny, watching everything fall apart and not knowing how to fix it. I keep thinking if you were here, maybe things would have gone differently. If you get this, just know we're thinking of you. I don't expect you to call. I'm not even sure you should. But that's it, I guess. Click. No, I'm sorry. No ownership. No truth. Just a strange, sagging sadness, like a balloon let go too late, too tired to rise. I didn't cry. Instead, I looked around the room. My sketch pad was still open on the nightstand, a half-finished drawing of a pine tree lit by the coast. My mug from the night before sat half-empty, lipstick smudged at the rim. My boots were by the door, caked in trail dust and rain. This was my life now. Not a detour, not an escape. A beginning. That afternoon, Clara texted, "Weather's decent. We're doing a fire pit at the cliffs. Bring something warm and someone weird. I smiled, texted back on my way. And I brought cupcakes from the cafe downstairs. Nothing fancy, just soft, sweet, and a little messy, like all the best things are. We sat under a sky full of soft clouds and crackling flames. Devin played something slow on his guitar. Emo recited a love poem she wrote about her cat. Someone brought a Polaroid and kept taking blurry, badly lit photos. None of us minded. At one point, Clara turned to me, wine in one hand, marshmallow in the other. "Hey, Jenny," she said. "Yeah." She grinned. "We're really glad you showed up." The words hit me harder than any voicemail ever could. Because they weren't trying to fix me or guilt me or pull something from me. They were just glad I was here. That night, after everyone left, I walked home alone under the misty stars. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt full. Not with duty, not with pain, but with choice. My mother's voicemail faded from my thoughts like fog on the tide. I didn't need to carry it because I wasn't theirs to lean on anymore. I was my own. A week passed. No new messages, no last-minute apologies, no sudden family breakthroughs. Just quiet. At first, I expected it to feel hollow, but instead it felt earned. Like the kind of silence that comes after the storm. Not fearful, not tense. Just still. Safe. I stayed in Portland longer than I'd planned. Long enough for the barista at the corner cafe to learn my name. Long enough for Clara to steal my jacket more than once. Long enough to stop counting the days since the wedding imploded. The ache of exclusion had softened into something else, something cleaner. A scar, not a wound. One morning, I woke to a message from the airline about an used flight credit. Brooklyn. The word landed with a dull weight. The truth was, I didn't want to go back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Not in the way they expected. And that's when I opened the family group chat for the first time in over 2 weeks. It was still there, frozen in digital amber. The last message had been from Serena's cousin, asking whether she should cancel her hotel reservation or if things were still happening. No one had replied. I typed slowly, "Mark, hope you're doing okay. I heard about everything. Wishing you peace and clarity as you figure out next steps." That was it. Polite, distant, complete. Then I opened a new tab and booked a ticket. Not home. To Iceland. A place I'd always dreamed of seeing, but had never dared book. Too remote, too expensive, too indulgent. A trip I'd once thought I'd need someone else to go with. But not anymore. I chose February. Cold, quiet. Aurora season. It felt right. Symbolic, maybe, but real. A goodbye trip, but not to a person. To a version of myself who'd been willing to shrink in silence. Who'd waited for acknowledgement that was never coming. Who'd given and then begged to be seen in return. I left a note on the nightstand of the Portland Inn before I checked out. A thank you, a memory, a trace of someone learning to start again. On my last night in town, Clara threw a goodbye potluck. Nothing fancy. Folding chairs, a borrowed speaker, someone's questionable lentil loaf. But the warmth in that tiny room could have melted glaciers. They toasted with cheap wine to new starts, to old wounds left behind. Clara hugged me extra tight at the door. "You know," she said, "when I met you on that trail, I thought, she's got a storm behind her." I laughed. "You weren't wrong. But you stayed through it," she said. "You let the rain fall, and then you made something better." "I'm still making it," I said quietly. "Good," she whispered. "Keep making." Back in my room, I packed slowly. My phone buzzed once, an Instagram notification. Mark had posted a photo. No caption. Just him, alone at a beach somewhere, staring out at the water. I didn't like it. I didn't comment. I didn't feel bitter. Just distant, like we lived on separate maps now. Before I turned in for the night, I lit a small candle someone had left in my goodbye basket. The scent was cedar and sage. Clean. Healing. I stood by the window and watched the last of the Portland rain fade into fog. Tomorrow, I'd board a plane. Alone. Not running, not escaping, but expanding. Because sometimes the best stories start after the door closes. And mine? Mine was just beginning. It was a rainy night in Brooklyn, the kind where the gutters are full and the taxi tires make long sighs against the pavement. I'd only come back to grab a few things, to clear out the apartment before officially subletting. My flight to Iceland was in 36 hours. I had no plans to tell anyone I was in town, which, of course, is exactly when they came. It was nearly 9 p.m. I was folding laundry when the buzzer rang 3 times in quick succession. I froze. No one I knew buzzed like that. A knot formed in my gut before I even crossed the room. I pressed the intercom. Hello. Silence at first. Then a familiar voice. Too careful, too composed. Jenny, it's Mom. Behind her, I heard movement. More voices. Please let us up. We just want to talk. My hand hovered over the release button. I didn't press it. Instead, I walked to the window. 3 stories below, huddled under a dripping black umbrella, stood my parents and Mark. All 3 looking older than I remembered. Tired. Worn down. Mark looked like he hadn't slept in days. My father's coat was too big on him. My mother was wearing heels she used to carry with confidence, now soaked and sinking into the sidewalk. I didn't move. The buzzer rang again. And again. Finally, I sighed and walked to the elevator, pressing the button and waiting. I didn't want to do this in the hallway. If they were coming up, they could see me on my terms. When the knock came at my door, I didn't rush. I opened it slowly. 3 stunned faces greeted me. None of them spoke for a full breath. Mark was the first to try. Jenny, but I raised a hand. Don't, I said softly. Just say what you came to say. My mother stepped forward, clutching her purse like a lifeline. We made mistakes, she said. Terrible ones. I thought I was doing what was best for everyone. You always seemed so strong. My father cleared his throat. We thought you didn't need us. That you were fine. I said nothing. Mark looked at me, eyes red. I messed up. I know that. But the wedding, Serena, all of it, it fell apart, and I blamed you. But the truth is, I counted on you fixing it. Like always. There it was. The honesty. Too late, but real. We came to say sorry, my mother added. And to ask, well, if you'd consider helping us still. The house. The debt. It's worse than we admitted. And your credit. I held up a hand again. They went quiet. I stepped back from the doorway. For one tiny second, their faces lit with hope. But then I reached for the suitcase beside me. It was already packed. Already zipped. I pulled it behind me and stepped into the hallway. Then, without a word, I gently closed the door behind me. Mark blinked. Wait. Where are you going? The elevator dinged at the end of the hall. I walked toward it. Steady steps, heart calm. My mother called after me, Jenny, please don't just walk away. I didn't turn around. I pressed the button. The doors slid open with a soft whoosh, and I stepped in. They didn't follow. They just stood there, all 3 of them, still soaking from the rain, still carrying everything they refused to see until now. The doors began to close. And just before they did, I met my mother's eyes one last time. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. But I did nod. A small, firm gesture that said everything I needed to say. I heard you. I see you. But I'm not coming back. The door shut and I was alone. As the elevator descended, my reflection stared back at me from the mirrored panel. For the first time in a long time, I saw someone I respected. Not because she forgave. Not because she fixed it. But because she finally chose herself. Outside, the rain was still falling. But this time, it didn't feel heavy. It felt like cleansing. Like beginning. I stepped out onto the street, suitcase in hand, and walked toward the cab waiting at the curb. Iceland could wait. Tonight, I just needed the wind on my face, the hum of the city, the echo of a door I didn't have to open again. And maybe tomorrow, a new chapter. One I'd write in my own ink, on pages no one else could tear out. Because this time, the story was mine. So tell me, if you were me, after all of that, would you have opened that door and let them back in? I'm genuinely curious what you think.